So to move into the 2000s, during Bruce Hales's reign, one of the most outrageous things I feel was the way that he manipulated David Bill, who I would suggest would have been a better qualified leader than Bruce Hales. I hope it's not true, but I've heard that he committed suicide in the bath, David Bill. If he did, I suggest that would be because he was a genuine brother who must have been so disappointed that he supported Bruce in the leadership. I mean, let's look. We all know about the Mayo 5 letter. Ooh, very serious, because things started off pretty lax. A lot of worldliness, as Bruce Hales called it, in the early time of his reign. So he was really strong in the letters, in the Mayo 5 letter. But prior to that, this I think is the worst thing. I understand it was prior, probably 03, 04. Based on the fact that the Brethren lost meeting rooms at the time of Aberdeen, he got personal control of all the meeting rooms around the world without telling us. Now that's crookery, if anything is. Maybe Garth, maybe you knew because you were in his elite squad, but I certainly never did. I've been giving money happily ever since. But what he's saying in that action is very clear, isn't it? That I am more reliable than the 55,000 Brethren. So the control has got to be in my hands. The world would be outraged if they knew. I know people like journalists like Michael Batchelor are, but it's astounding that he doesn't ask us whether we would support that move. It's stealing. I think the money, the ownership of the rooms have been paid for by the local Brethren, going to each locality. So he's stealing the rooms off the local Brethren. I certainly thought when we were building the rooms that, and I was giving very, very, very generously and doing a lot to support the Brethren movements, that they were in the safe hands of all the local Brethren, and that the trustees of the local room, of the city room, were just really entrusted in looking after the room on behalf of the Brethren. But why didn't, now I can see it, that Bruce Hales could sack all the trustees overnight and just take ownership of the room. That's why the rooms are safe with the government, which is what many Brethren writing into the Charity Commission in 2012 was saying, that we can't have our rooms being taken over or whatever, as though the poor Brethren were being hard done by. But the man who's conned us all is Bruce Hales. And the very same man has turned my local Brethren against me and my family. And I'm outraged by that. Schools. I went, you know, the time I went to get the funding together for York School, Wetherby before that, was immense. Going around, drumming up money coming in. And then, of course, so I think that needs investigation from an outside source, a government source, maybe the Royal Commission of Australia, at least, if not special forensic bodies, because it looks to me as though that money is vouchsafed to the Hales family, which is shocking, because we know how violent they are. The lies that's told in court, the way that they tried to say that I was a murderer and an arsonist, basically, of saying I wanted to put a cap through Bruce Hale's head and burn his house to the ground. Absolute nonsense. I've never been violent all my life. Indeed, even the brethren in Leeds have had to acknowledge that to the police in the next court case they're bringing up against me for harassment. And that's just for writing letters to brethren. Thank you very much, dear brethren that I gave over £1 million to in my life. So it wasn't a very wise choice to give my money to a system where they're just pouring it into the Hales family to look after them when he can turn against you in a flash. So there's a lot of unrighteousness, and I grieve that families that were wealthy are now average or on the breadline. I'm sure Bruce Hales will give them enough to feed, yeah, I'm sure. But we're not in a communist state, surely. Anyway, that I've just made my point. I think that you've got serious unrighteousness, which would normally, in previous times of eras of leaders in the Brethren, have been resulted in people being withdrawn from. When you consider the minor things that people have been withdrawn from over the years, it's just so inconsistent, so shocking. So anyway, the other thing that marked the 2000s and later was a lot of people moving. Good men moved to support smaller localities. I mean, some amazingly were so selfless they even moved, like Richard Marsh from Cambridge to Regina. And look at what the Brethren are doing to him now. So Mike Logan, he's Calgary now, I think. He moved from Winnipeg, and then he suddenly got invites to loads of meetings, and then he was shut up. So, and they got hold of his business, and basically said all the Brethren would take it. Bruce Hales was behind that. It's shocking, 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 shocking. And I've been around the world. There are multiple cases. I've got stories of hundreds of victims of your arbitrary system, where Bruce Hales, John Hales, Symington and or Taylor have taken advantage of poor hapless brethren that have lost their livelihoods and been subject to all sorts of vicious legal cases, just like I have. Now, the fact that I've survived, I thought when I was surviving rebukes in the assembly that the Lord was over the severe discipline that the brethren were putting me through, because he had something special in mind, on the basis that, take Ray Story for instance, that what he'd been put through in connection with his accident and the jail, and the way the brethren were saying the government of God's on you, you know. I thought, well, the only way I can give credit to this is by knowing there'll be a bright outcome. So I was waiting, I'm waiting to hear that Ray has been properly instated in a position of being able to influence things in the brethren. And that's what I thought would happen to me eventually. I thought Bruce Hales, under God's hands, was putting me through a crucible of suffering. I don't blame Jed's accident onto Bruce Hales, except that we looked very closely, Derek Tens and I, into the edict that drains should be going direct into the main sewer, and decided on the advice that Derek got that we should go deep, make that deep dig. So it actually was to comply with the Brethren separation laws. Well, why rather than giving false reports to the Leeds family court and the judge, why aren't you sticking up for me, Garth, and saying, hey, lads did that in the best of intentions because he was one of the Brethren, and therefore show a bit of understanding and sympathy and stick up for your brother in the face of an onslaught from Bruce Hales. That would be the honourable thing to do. It shouldn't just be gang warfare against hapless souls that happen to say something or raise a question or unwittingly offend somebody. So along with these relocations, it's interesting to me that New York and London have been destroyed. Why is that? Is that to make sure that the power is vested in Sydney? the brethren had moved out of New York. In fact, my fiancée, Olivia, said that when the brethren said that she couldn't marry a black man, she said that would be the last wedding in New York, and it was. They moved out. So that's an outstanding issue with the York brethren, which you need to make them aware of. They should perhaps meet an assembly and put it right. It's blatant discrimination. She was suited up to all sorts of black guys in the Caribbean, but they weren't what she wanted. So women should have their own choice in marriages. Men shouldn't be influenced by hierarchy. And so, you know, this whole Holland move, so I mentioned before, the fact that Dick Dallow was just ruined financially through moving to Holland. The brethren should make up to him, big time. He's one of the most generous brethren, like his father and mother were. So he should be the wealthiest. He should be in control of the wealth rather than Bruce Ailes, in my book, because he's kind. I think if he came to see me, he'd plead for me, and he'd actually take my story into the brethren, and in his own sweet, humble way, unoffensive way. I know in the early 2000s, or after his father and mother died, he was helping brethren in Watford and other places, putting money into businesses. What a lovely man. So he shouldn't lose out through going to Holland. Was Hales' motive in suggesting I went there to take my money away from me? I hope not, but I very much suspect that was the case. You know, you're such a litigious organisation. You're a business. That's why you use the legal system. Like Christians don't use legal systems against Christians. Surely not. It's completely against Scripture, if nothing else. Apart from the teachings of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. So, you know, the brethren now are throwing money around as if it doesn't matter. And other people's money, you know, where Bruce Hales directs money should be used, it's not his money. He should be accountable for every penny of it, like I would be if someone entrusted their money to me. It was unbelievable that I kindly helped many brethren in there when I was in, and then when you shut me up, all the money had to be drawn in from these hapless souls. I went to Boston because I had been responsible for getting the money to buy the school. And I wanted a big do to pay the money back quickly, because the money had come in under false pretenses, because I told there was gifts, and then interest-free loans and loans with interest. And then the poor brethren who gave loans with interest were told from above me, I think John Anderson and Bruce Hales, that they had to give it interest-free. Well, that was awful. So I was going to Bruce Hales at Boston in October 14 to get that money paid back quickly, because it's unrighteous to hang on to other people's money without a prior arrangement for interest-free. Utterly unrighteous. And I'd like to apologise personally to all the brethren in Leeds, Harrogate, Newcastle and Middlesbrough who were affected by that arbitrary enforcement from John Anderson, didn't know what was going on, or if he did, Garth, it was through you. Utter interference with financial matters that I was handling, I would say humbly, very well, very carefully. We had a team. Chris Johnson, Johnny Cruth, I think it was, and Derek Oliver, Mike Harding. But Mike Harding's turned against me big time, unbelievable. At work. Anyway, that's a story that it's too sad to talk about, really. I do think that the whole thing's fraudulent. And, you know, centralisation of localities during the 60s now moved on to centralisation of businesses, and people who may be regarded as a challenge in places being shunted off to localities where they're under control. I'd have been under the strict control of Alan Clarkson, and now I know how he's turned against me, because you're in touch with him, Garth. Despite me lending him €400,000 to relocate from Perth, Australia to Holland, it's unbelievable. It's so hard, so callous. I gave a reading in, he was there, on on the feelings of the man of God, rather stupidly, but thinking that Bruce Hales's actions were because he felt and understood people's conditions and was kindly trying to bring out the best in people. How deceived I was. And I'd like to apologise to the brethren in Holland or The Hague for that ministry, but I think the principle is right, that we expect each other to be kind and feeling, have hearts and souls, so that there's soul empathy with people going through suffering and struggle. And I really loved the brethren in The Hague because it was tough. Small meeting, one meeting in the whole country. Same with the brethren from Germany. There's small meetings in a big country. And we went up to Sweden, didn't we? Alan and Murray Walker had me giving a preaching in the fellowship meeting there. I think it was about 2012. And, I think I took from a preaching that John Myhill was sticking up for the sisters. Yeah, I'm sticking up for the sisters. It's tough for them. But except that they all love Bruce Hales because they've all got massive incomes, they're all very comfortable. Not all of them, some of the poorer ones aren't, but certainly the hierarchies wise are, without actually having to earn any money. Well, it's not really the real world, it's the religious world of Bruce Hales, and it's not very good. They haven't come up the hard way like my fiancée, Olivia Francis, has. She's had to bring up 3 children on her own and run a very successful business, and she's been tackled by all sorts of nasty people in Australia. Not a very nice country, as we're finding out from the way that Bruce Hales is imposing his Australian rules on the UK. We know better in the UK. We've got to stand up for righteousness and truth, and what the Charity Commission have laid on us in the Faith in Practice document.